So this is, if you're in leadership, this is what I would advise in terms of the playbook. When stuff like this happens, we have to acknowledge the impact. Okay, let's acknowledge the impact. Then let's clarify the context in terms of what happened and why it happened. Let's try to avoid as much as we can being defensive about it. Like you said, if you don't know something, you don't know it. And then from there, announce what changes you're going to make and what that's going to look like. Welcome to another episode of I Take Your Point podcast. I'm John Dunson, joined by my lovely co-host, who is looking extra special today, as always.
I'm looking special.
Well, you always look special, but you look extra special today. You have a smile on your face, a pep in your step. It must be because it is March. And
it's
you know
because my son's home.
Well, I'm glad your son is home. All right, so today we're going to have a special conversation. We want to take an opportunity to lend our voice to the things that are going on in this particular time. And obviously there's a lot going on at this particular time. Miss Lynn, before we jump into it, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Like I said, the boy's home, and so I'm excited about that. We just toured a historically Black university, so I'm hoping to entice him to come back home and leave Arizona.
Good. Well, hopefully he will come back home and leave Arizona. Yeah. So let's jump into it. Guys, there are moments that split a room instantly, and at a major award shows, especially during a live broadcast, things that happen. And those of you who are not familiar, a couple of weeks ago, we had at the BAFTA Awards in London, we had an individual who was in the audience who has Tourette's yell out the N-word. And it happened in real time. No rewind, no edit, no buffer. And immediately, individuals took a side. You had some that said, he has Tourette's. Then you had others that said that word carries a lot of history, a lot of hurt. Both reactions were fast, both reactions were emotional, and both reactions were real, because leadership decided that they were going to take a different path. We all experienced it in real time. But here's the harder question. When something like that happens on stage and it's under your brand and under your leadership, what do you do? Now, we can have this conversation about whether or not the N-word is toxic, and we'll have the conversation about the certain things that need to be done with individuals who may be suffering from a disability, and we'll have that conversation. But we're not trying to cancel anyone or anything, because again, leadership doesn't get to determine how an individuals are going to feel. Individuals are going to feel how they're going to feel. The leadership's job is to try to control the reality of the impact. And on that aspect, you had the individuals who were involved in BAFTA fail miserably. And so we want to look at it through a couple of lenses today. We want to talk about it from a cultural standpoint. We want to talk about it from a politics standpoint. And we want to talk about it from the edutainment standpoint. And again, it's not to assign blame to the individual who has Tourette's, nor is it to play down on how it is that Mr. Jordan and individuals who were the butt of the N-word, how they felt. And so we want to make certain that we are talking about the intent versus the impact. So let's get into it. Ms. Lynn, did you have an opportunity to look at the conversation that was happening with respect to the BAFTA incident?
I did, yes.
Okay. So I want to look at this from when the intent is complicated, but the impact is real, meaning that you had an individual who has a disability, and based on that disability, he or she may not be able to control what he or she does in that instance. The people that do have control is the leadership of that event. And so my question to you is, what does the leadership owe the public in a situation?
And so let me just do a preface, right? So I'm going to say that I sit in both of those spaces. I have a son that we have to make special accommodations for, and I'm also Black, contrary to your belief. I am. So for me, and I'm going to frame it from my perspective, from those two perspectives. The individual in question has a special component of Tourette's, cochlealia, I believe that's how you pronounce it. So not everyone with Tourette's also has that component. That component, one of the symptoms of it is that there are outbursts, and they're usually triggered by stressful, high-tense situations. So no matter what, whether he uttered the N-word, the C-word, the P word, the MF word, whatever word, he was going to do something. And I can also speak from it because when I was younger, I had this intent of becoming a child psychologist. So I spent 4 years in a behavioral hospital, and I worked on the children's units, ages 4 to 12. And we had a kid on there that had Tourette's, and he also had that component. And so he would just say the most amazing words. And so he's going to be triggered by stress. And so I'll say this, and I'll use my son in my experience, my journey. 9.9% of the time, my kid is just living life. He's not doing anything. He's just being a regular young adult, or when he was younger, he's just being a regular boy. But 0.1% of the time, we may have some issues. I'm not going to keep him indoors and keep him locked away because of a 0.1% chance that he may do something egregious or something that will cost me financial concerns, right? But what I will do as the neurotypical adult or responsible party is I will mitigate and I will accommodate for him. For example, if he used to have this thing where he would lose it if somebody coughed or sneezed. So when we would go to the movie theater, I would always make sure that we sat at an exit row. I would always make sure that we got there after the previews because I knew that his threshold was an hour and 20 minutes. And so I knew those things. So the onus was on me to make accommodations for not only him, for everyone else. So in this situation, just going back to the awards, something was going to happen. It's a high stress environment. There's lots of cameras. There's lots of things. Something was going to happen. Again, using my experience as the framework, 2 things. Putting the individual, first off, just letting everybody know that something, we have someone here that processes things differently. And so something could happen. We want to apologize in advance. I think he uttered it like 3 times. The first time would have been, hey, let's move outside. Let's go get something to drink. Let's, whatever, just removing them from the situation, lowering the stress levels because it's a neurological condition, right? So just trying to mitigate. And then for me, I think the most egregious part was that because it wasn't live streamed, why didn't you cut that out? I don't understand why it needed to be played over and over. So I do not assign blame, and I don't like assigning blame anyway, but I don't assign, yes I do. I don't assign blame to obviously someone that has limited control over a neurological disorder, right? So it is what it is. But the neurotypical person or the neurotypical leadership had a responsibility not only to this person, but also to the people in attendance. Because knowing what I know, that after that happens, there's also great grief. There is great embarrassment. There is, because there's no control. And so the individuals that have that journey, it's not like they're disassociated from it. They have no control over it. And there's great remorse. I feel that the leadership did a disservice to the people in attendance because everybody should have been offended, and to the individual that uttered the word because he's also suffering. I'm not going to get into degrees of suffering. I refuse to do that because again, I would live in 2 worlds, and what I will say is both of them are real.
Okay, I want to stay on the leadership aspect because from a leadership perspective, if I have an event that's going on and I know that we're going to have individuals who may have the ability to do something that could require some intervention on my part, then as a leader, I need to be prepared for that. I need to make accommodations. So I think of it in terms of this. If I'm a political candidate or if I'm the manager of a political candidate and I know that that political candidate may say something or may go off script, then it's my job to make certain that I don't put that person in situations that will allow him or her to go off script. I know that there's certain things that I need to put in place to mitigate the damage for what could be the fallout from that. And so from a leadership standpoint, a leader anticipates that certain things can happen. And like you said, he or she or the organization puts in guardrails that says, should this happen, we need to have a kill switch, or we need to have an out to be able to mitigate this. This particular leadership of this particular organization failed in that capacity. I think that is completely different. You brought up a parent and not wanting to shortchange your child from an experience. I think that is admirable and understandable, but it also comes with risk. And those risks that you take are, if I'm going to take the risk of putting my child in a place where he or she can have experiences, there could be situations that happen. I can't not be cognizant of the fact that those events may happen, and I cannot not deal with the consequences if something like that does happen.
I agree with you. I will just frame this from my experience. I know that there was a potential for that to happen. Even with my neurotypical son, there's a meltdown in the grocery store. It happens all the time. As parents, and I will say a parent as a leader, we do have contingency plans. It requires being extremely mindful and diligent and paying attention. And so sometimes, like when we took the boys to Disneyland, I didn't get to experience Disneyland like I wanted to experience Disneyland, but it wasn't about me. It was about them. And so making sure that they can fully experience it in the way that they needed to experience it. So whether that was headphones, glasses, sunglasses to minimize the stimuli that was coming in, that onus is on me. And I know there's going to be risk. So the goal is to minimize that and to course correct should something happen. But you have to be proactive and you have to plan for that. You don't wait until something happens. You plan for it. And so I plan for everything. As soon as I walk into a room, I automatically do a risk assessment. Where are the exits? Is there anything breakable? Who are the people here? I do that every single time I go into a room with my son because I need to minimize that risk. And so that is me as a leader of this family, as the mother, doing that risk assessment. If I'm having an event as a leader, I'm going to also do a risk assessment and say, okay, so these potential things can happen. What are the contingency plans? And then how do I course correct? Like any leader should be able to do that.
So I think we agree on the fact that leadership has to be able to try to think and prepare 2 to 3 steps ahead.
That's the difference between, John, a leader and a manager. A manager is going to deal with the reactiveness. A leader is going to be proactive.
That's a good point. Do you, or have you, and I'll use that word, have you ever been called the N-word?
I don't think so. We don't use that word in our house. We've never used it.
I'm not talking about in your house.
I don't think I've ever been called that.
So the first time I was called the N-word, I was 16. I was working in Carl's food store, and it's a grocery store. And this is a young lady who I attended school with. I think we were in the same grade, maybe 10th grade. And she was a cashier, and I was a bag boy, or stock, whatever you call them at the time. And I remember, for whatever reason, something happened, and she called me the N-word. Now, viscerally, that did something in me, and I reached back, and this is the only time I've ever hit a woman. I reached back, and I slapped her, and I spit on her.
Wow, that is, whoa.
Yeah, I slapped her, and I spit on her.
I'm shocked because it's so out of character
for me.
You. And I've done so many things that probably would warrant that in the Color Purple days.
So this is what then happened. I got fired. She kept her job, okay? So lesson learned from that. I got home. My dad said to me, he asked me, he said, what happened? I said, she called me the N-word. And he said, what did you do? I said, I slapped her and I spit on her. And he said, you were fired. She kept her job.
Why is that? Meaning
that the actions that I took was in some ways an example of being an N-word.
Okay, and I obviously don't know your father.
I took his point to mean, look, don't let the words that individuals may say to you get you to the point where you lose your job and they don't.
And I agree. I understand that point. Also, I don't believe in that they go low and you go high. I'm more of the Cardi B mentality. You go low and I'll burn this bitch down. Like, I don't believe in that.
That was the first time that the N-word was said. That, at 16 years old, growing up in rural South Carolina, that informed a lot of decisions that I would then make over the next couple of years. Next incident, I was fortunate enough to be selected to be a part of what is called Boy State. And that's a designation that the state of South Carolina has for individuals who are high performing, who may have a desire to go into government or go into politics. And I was selected. You only get to select several from a school. And I was one of the 4 or 5 that was selected from my high school. In South Carolina, you go to this place called the Citadel, which is a military facility, and it's in Charleston, South Carolina. And so you go for 2 weeks and you learn about government, South Carolina, yada, yada, yada. I'm in the barracks or in my dorm room, and my roommate is a white guy, and he's from upstate. I'm from the beach area. And early one morning, I get startled from my sleep. And there's these guys, and they throw a sack over my head.
The audience can't see me right now, but my eyes have just did cartoon eyes.
They throw a sack over my head, and I hear laughter. And then there's water that's thrown at me. But it was part of a hazing incident, or hazing that they did for Boys' Day. And I remember hearing the laughter, and I remember the feeling that I felt. And again, my roommate was a white guy. Right? And what he said afterward, he was like, I wish you could have seen your face. You thought this was like the KKK or something. And I'm like, yeah, you laugh it off. But in the back of your mind, you're going, this is not cool. And there's no way in hell that I would subject myself to this at the expense of my dignity for the pleasure of someone else. And that, coupled with the N-word, coupled with other experiences, led to me deciding then and there, I would never attend a PWI, and I would never place myself in a situation where I would allow myself to feel what I felt, and what I felt was powerless at those two incidents that happened. So I say all that to say, with the N-word, because and I get it, there's a difference between ER and AH, and I don't use either. When it's a rap song that comes on and it has it in the language, I just use the term N-word. I've not used it for at least 40 years. So when did you decide for your family that is not something that was going to be utilized?
It wasn't something that was used growing up. My mom and dad never used the hard A, hard R. Like, we just didn't do that. I've never heard either one of them use that word. And so it wasn't something that I grew up with. Even if they're playing spades or dominoes or doing whatever they were doing, drinking some brown liquor, they never said that word. It wasn't a conversation that they said that we did. I just never heard it. But I will say that the youngest one, my youngest son, I remember going into his room and he was talking to his friends and they were just in it up. And I said, okay. I didn't say anything to him. I said, hey, kid, I want to watch a movie with you. And so I said, Nana and I want to watch a movie. So we turned on 42. And I didn't say anything to him. I just let him watch the movie. And then I said, sometimes words have a lot of meaning. And I just waited for him to cry. And that's how I like to parent.
So the impact of the word then is felt through the history, because when you're growing up in the 80s, and I remember being a freshman in college and NWA coming out. And literally the name of the group was NWA, which was N with Attitude. You couldn't put it on the package of the CD. You couldn't have it on the package. It had parental advisory stickers that was on there. And I'm fascinated by a couple things, because a couple things happened with this incident. One was you had the use of the N-word, and then you had some white folks say, well, you guys use it. What say you about when you hear white folk or other cultures that will say, well, you guys use it?
Say, why do you need to use it? Why do you feel compelled to use it? Like, there are billions of words in the English language. I don't know if that's true, but there are a lot of words in the English language. And like I said, the 18 years that I spent in the house with my mom and dad, not once did I hear them say it. So there are plenty of other words that you can use. So why do you need to use it?
That reminds me of a James Baldwin quote. He had this famous quote about the N-word, and it was essentially, white folk need to ask themselves the question, why do they need an N? Why did they come up with the concept of an N? What's in them that made it so imperative and important for them to create the N-word?
Because I speak white, I'm going to render my opinion. Again, it's to dehumanize and to separate. So if you are this, then you can't be part of us because you're different. And so let's go ahead and create this label that's going to designate that you are different. And then I can put all of this definition and connotation on what that word means. You're stupid, you're slow, you are used only for manual. I can do a lot of things if I put a label on you. And then I can justify the mistreatment because I've labeled you not as human, not as part of us, but other. And so all of the things that I'm doing is justified.
Do you think that it's okay for Black folk to use it even if they say the N-A, the A-H as opposed to the E-R?
I don't have an opinion. I don't have an opinion on if it's okay or not. For me, it's not okay. For my family, it's not okay because there's several other words you can use. And why do you need to use it? Because it has so much historical pain associated with it. Why do you need that? I just don't understand why.
So you spoke several times that your oldest is an individual who has a disability.
Autism. We can say the word.
I wanted to be respectful of. And so when I was growing up, in the area that I was growing up, Black folk traditionally had certain language that they would use, certain things that they would say.
Sure.
And they would say if someone had a disability, that he or she may be slow. If someone was gay, they may have a little sugar in their blood. You know, if someone was that. So we had these things that we would say in the culture that is no longer appropriate to say. So,
it shouldn't have ever been appropriate because what that did long term, and not to get off on a soapbox, but here I am, that it delays, let's just say that with children with autism, the number of children that are diagnosed with autism, and autism is a huge spectrum. Everybody's not the same, obviously. The delay in the Black community of those children getting help that could potentially impact their life is lower because they do have that stigma in our community. And they'll just say, they just need a spanking. Oh, they just need a strong Black man. Okay, so they don't. They actually need a behavioral therapist and maybe a speech therapist. That might be helpful. Giving them a spanking is not going to spank it out of them. So there's this thing in our community where we have stigmatized certain things. And I don't know if it comes from slavery. I don't know where it comes from. But, if you're not producing the way that people want you to produce, then you label them. You don't give them the same opportunities. You don't look for the gifts that God has given them for this world. And so then you can just go on with your life, right? And even someone that is gay, right? So I don't know this. I'm just saying that the amount of Black men, Black women that don't come out in the Black community because of this ostracization, that can create mental and psychological impact. Yeah, because that's what we collectively do in our community.
But I think there has to be grace and space here because what you're talking about takes a while to get. It takes a while for A, the institutions to catch up, and B, for the culture to catch up.
But I don't understand that. Why? And so for my family, you say the R word in here and I don't know you anymore. I don't give it if it's my mom.
But you're talking about your family today.
I'm talking about, I will tell you this. I will say this.
We're not talking about 25 years ago. Because 25 years ago, it was a different time. It is a different era.
It was a different time. It was a different place. But the fact that you were ostracizing and dehumanizing people, it didn't matter if it was 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades. At some particular point, you should have known that wasn't right. Like just inherently as a Christian, how do you think that was right? Help me to understand that part. Jesus had everybody, whores and whatever else in there. I just like to say whores.
I will say this again, because hopefully we evolve as people, and as we learn better, we try to do better. And there are certain things that I may have said or done in my 20s and 30s.
And 40s and 50s, because you and I have had this conversation.
That
you say it again, and you don't know me.
That I hope that I do not do in my 40s and 50s as much. History can inform some things. And again, institutions can help with respect to making certain that we are treating individuals respectfully. Speaking of institutions, one of the things that I was thinking about, and again, I saw on social media that said that if you're a huge advocate for kids and families with disabilities, and there's a structure that's in place there. And by structure...
And it's just different abilities, just so you know. But go on.
So again, language.
I don't know what's a disability. It's just a different ability.
Languages. Again, the language changed. That's proven the point.
But if you think about the language and you're intentional, especially for someone like you that loves to remind me, words matter. That you would think that if you are directing words and you dissect that word and you see how harmful it could be to the recipient, someone, especially like you, because you love to tell me, words matter. When you say that, you can't be saying saying, I hope you break your back and whatever. Like, you can't say that. Yes, I can. No one broke your back. Step on a crack, you break your mama's back. I've stepped on so many cracks, my mama's back is just fine.
Again, you're talking intent versus impact. And what you're saying is...
Exactly. And so, but I'm saying that for people, if you do have empathy and you do live your life with empathy and you do live your life with intentionality, then you would intuitively know that those words are harmful. So what I hear is that you don't care. You don't care enough to think about your words, especially, again, someone like you that is consistently telling other people that words matter. So if you don't apply that same philosophy to the words that you utter, you don't care about the recipient.
I take your point. I disagree with it.
Of course you disagree with it because it's about you.
Well, yeah, but I disagree with it fundamentally. Okay, so because I'm a protector of free speech, I think as long as you are...
then if you're a protector of free speech, then I'm getting ready to hard A your ass right now. You're going to be the first time I utter the words going to be directed at your black ass.
So that said, there's something that I saw that I had to give a clap to, because had dude stood up, and this is going back now to my man with Tourette, had he stood up and said something anti-Semitic, that damn show would not have aired. He'd have been crucified. He'd have had to tour Jerusalem and take like 10 hours of training on how it is to be sympathetic to the Jewish cause and give a donation while you're doing it.
And so, I would like to disagree with you, but I do believe that someone said something about Free Palestine or something, and they took that out. So I want to disagree with you and challenge you, but I can't.
So the question then becomes, who decides what's free speech versus hate speech? Because clearly that community or the organization saw that as free speech. Black folk took it as hate speech.
It wasn't, okay, so again, intent and impact. The impact was hate speech. I do not believe that the intent was hateful, but the impact was hateful. So again, it's the receiver and the recipient of that. Do we not take that into account when we are looking at free speech, when we're looking at the words that we use? It's just whatever we feel. We don't care about the recipient.
Let me see if I understand. If the recipient is someone who we've not given a damn about previously anyway,
right,
then it seems to be okay.
That's what I'm saying. So if you have someone, and I'm saying this collectively, because some of my best friends are Jewish. Just kidding. So this is just something I'm putting out there. You're saying that the Jewish people have a lot of influential power. Like they could do something. There are repercussions for saying certain things. I'm just making this up.
You don't have to make it up. Look at Kanye West.
Okay, well, I'm just saying. Okay, so let's just say that. Let's just have some...
Hold on. And for the record, what Kanye West said was despicable. Okay? The things that he said were despicable. But it is also true that we get collectively offended by some, and we don't get as offended by things that are said.
Because what I was saying is that those with power, who have influence, who can have repercussions that are financial or whatever, you're going to be more mindful of the words and the things that you say. A black person, they don't have as much influence and power, right? I'm saying this for this scenario. So I can say things because I know, just like with you, the example that you used about slapping the girl and then your father's advice, I know that black people have been conditioned to turn the other cheek. Again, they haven't met this black person because the only cheek I'm turning is to punch you in your face because I'm militant.
Okay, so think about this. We had recently the passing of the Reverend Jesse Jackson. And Jesse Jackson was running for POTUS in 1994 and was doing quite well until he made a disparaging remark about the Jewish community in New York. And he called New York H-Town and not Houston. Once he said that, once he called New York Town, that for all intents and purposes destroyed his chance of becoming POTUS. And literally 40 years later, there are some Jewish people that will not forgive him for saying that. Now, you take what Jesse Jackson said, and you take the incident that happened with the young man that was murdered, 6 months or so ago, who was clearly a racist, clearly saying things that were not cool. And we're talking about Charlie Kirk, right? His stuff was not directed at Jews until later. Now, once he started talking bad about Israel, now all of a sudden, he is persona non grata. How dare he say those things? What say you?
It's the same thing I just said. Those with power, that can do things and they can impact your livelihood, you're going to be more aware and you're going to be more careful with the words that you use. Those without power, or those that have been conditioned to turn the other cheek and not go to the manager or whatever. We don't, I love the manager, love them. And so
Karen, so.
I do. And so I just had an incident at the Costco yesterday.
I'm not going to even say what you call the Costco person, because that was very prejudiced.
Did I? I don't know. I was so mad and tired. I
called him Costco Assad.
That was his name. His name was Assad, and so I called him Costco Assad. That was his name. It was on the thing. I took a picture of his name badge to turn him in, and that's what the name was.
I thought you called him because he was Muslim.
And so no, that was his actual name. Annoyed at this whole thing that happened. And I'm telling all my friends. And so they were like, well, he's doing his job. And I said, well, I'm doing my job. And my job is to hold him accountable, because if you're not asking for everybody for a receipt, you're not going to be asking me for a receipt. I promise you that.
Picture is up at Costco.
I don't care. They love me at Costco because I contact them all the time. Here's the thing. I said, oh, sure, I'm Costco Assad. I will show you my receipt. I told him.
Why are you calling him like he's Saddam Hussein? Costco Assad.
That's his name. He works at Costco and his name is Assad. So he's Costco Assad. And I said, I will show you this receipt and I'm going to be pissed. And so he goes, well, I really nice. I said, okay, I'm going to be pissed. So I showed it to him and he goes, well, I'm so sorry. I am still pissed and I am taking a picture of you, Costco Assad.
That sounds very prejudiced. You can't be.
It's not prejudice. I'm saying that we've been conditioned as people to turn the other cheek, to make concessions, to excuse poor behavior. And so because we have been conditioned and it's wildly known, people think they can do and say whatever to us, and we will be like, well, it's better to keep our job. But you know what? Mess with the wrong person.
Well, I think you're talking about the difference between protected speech and regulated speech. So,
I'm sorry, talking about what?
Protected speech versus regulated speech. It's okay. You can say whatever it is that you want to say. You have the protection by living in the United States of America.
You can't say fire in a crowded building.
That's regulated speech. So you can't say, so you can say what it is that you want to say. That's not to say that you don't have repercussions for what it is.
Sure, exactly.
And
right.
So
there's a consequence typically to everything that you do. And so we can say this: if the president of Nike stood on the stage and was like, these ends, and I'm pretty sure he's going to have a consequence, right?
Of course he's going to have a consequence. He's going
to have a consequence, because if you are asking Black athletes to sponsor and endorse your product and we're buying your shoes, you will have a response, and it's not going to be favorable.
So you think about all the times you had individuals say certain things and it cost them their career. The hot mic moments of it costing. We talked about Jesse Jackson with respect to his utterance of Hide Me Town. I'm also reminded of what he said about Barack Hussein Obama. And one of the things that he said about Obama that got him in hot water was, and I don't know if you remember this, but it was a hot mic. He was talking to someone on live television. And, Obama, and you call me Obama sometimes in terms of my...
It's because it takes so long for you to finish talking. Obama, please.
So you remember the big thing with Obama and a lot of Black folk was it felt that he was talking down to Black folk.
I don't remember this because I'm on his level.
You're not around a lot of Black people. So that was the big thing with Obama. It felt like he was talking down to Black folk, especially the Black men, about pulling your pants up and stuff that he would say that was pissing a lot of the young Black boys off. And so that's
holding them accountable. Interesting. That's talking down.
But it wasn't necessarily holding them accountable. It was the way that it was delivered. So Jesse Jackson was on live television. He was being interviewed, and he said, "I don't like the way he's talking down to Black people."
I'm going to just say this because I have a fundamental problem with this too. This Black on Black crime, like this Black on Black hate.
Why is that Black on Black hate?
Help me to understand Mr. Jackson that's dead. Glory be to God and whatever else I'm supposed to say. Or is it rest in peace? Whatever it is. That you could have had a conversation with him. Why in the world would you use a national stage to create division amongst Black people to air your dirty laundry? Help me.
And I think that he was having the conversation with the other gentleman, and I can't remember who the gentleman was that was beside him, and Mike caught him saying that. And it's no different different than President Biden saying that Obama was clean and articulate, and black folk were offended by that.
To say he was clean,
You're so articulate. I get it. I understand from the standpoint of politics and speech that the speech can get you in trouble. I mean, we see it on college campuses. We're living in an era now where you can only say certain things if you believe certain things. If you believe certain things, if you're to the right, you can say certain things and they'll go, hey, this is free speech, you know? But you let a black person or a brown person say some of the stuff that that's being said right now on these campuses, well, that's just hate speech. How dare you talk about Costco Assad like that? How dare you talk about Chad, in a manner saying that, whatever.
Well, so my son is going through that right now. And he is on a very conservative campus and they love to say things. For him, when he challenges them, because apparently he has my DNA and we don't know how to be quiet, that he is being not reprimanded, but he feels the brunt of it. Like when he counters them. And I was like, well, that's the place that you're supposed to have discourse, is on a college campus. But there's this assimilation that's happening across college campuses, even at UT, where they're trying to consolidate some of the courses and degrees so that they're less, liberal or whatever they want to call it, that there seems to be this concerted effort to make it more assimilated and to be more conservative. And so anybody that has a diverse voice or opinion, they're ostracized.
Yeah, I think we're in an interesting time now. Look, you can make accommodations for certain things, but that doesn't exclude you from the repercussions of the accommodations that have been made. Invite a Charlie Kirk or someone to your campus. Yes, you're allowing them free speech, but if some shit pops off, you're still responsible for it.
Again, I go back to, as a leader, you do proactive risk assessment. As a manager, you get on stage and be like, oh, I think that for anybody that was offended, sorry.
So speaking of that, coming back to BAFTA and the entertainment and education of it, you mentioned that this was not a live broadcast. They had time.
They had time.
As the great Maxine Waters said, I got time today. They had time to literally go in and edit out this response.
And that's part of the risk assessment and the risk response.
But they elected not to. And their excuse was this. Well, with everything that was going on, the control room didn't hear the fact that this guy had said it 72 times. They didn't hear it.
Because the control room seems to be desensitized to the word, because they were probably saying it in there. Like, look at these. They didn't know if it was him or them.
Awesome. Did you say that? Was it live? So then we come back to this. Where, in terms of entertainment and education, how do we hold accountable organizations like that clearly didn't have any guardrails up, or if they had them, they were just not followed? What's the responsibility that we have to networks, to institutions like that, to award shows? And I get that the gentleman had Tourette's and we can't fault him. But where I come down on the side where you had with Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, you had individuals who had worked so hard, and this was supposed to be their night.
And that's the problem, right? And so again, going back to the leadership and the fact that as Black people, we've been conditioned to take the high road. And so for them to say they didn't hear the word, they didn't think it would be a big deal. They didn't think that, they were like, it'll happen. It'll get more publicity for this show. I promise you, they were in a war room and they had these conversations. They just didn't be like, oh, okay, we didn't watch it. We didn't hear it. Stop. You did. But you made a calculated decision that the reward was greater than the risk, because it was against Black people. What they gonna do?
So what I hear you say is they've made a calculated decision to keep it real, to keep it authentic.
Sure. And then we can do this.
We can going to happen to their brand, because they feel we don't have a lot of Black people in London watching BAFTA anyway. So the fallout from the brand is going to be very minimal.
But I've never even talked about this award. I couldn't care less about it. Everybody's talking about it. So when you look at the risk versus the reward, I am confident that they made a calculated decision that we're just going to go ahead and do it because having the exposure for the awards is greater than editing it out and people still not talking about us because they didn't know we existed, right?
Do you believe that they should have, because the apology that they put out after this thing was not an apology at all. It was, dude has Tourette's, get over it, essentially.
And the onus wasn't on dude with Tourette's. The onus is on you, manager, that's not a leader. You're just a dang manager.
When you think about live performances and you think about where society landed on that incident, because again, you had a lot of white folk and a lot of advocates for people with special needs going, he has Tourette's, we need to be accommodating for that. And you had a lot of black folk. You had a lot of black folk. And I know you said you didn't want to get into...
No. I'm gonna use your default thing. Two things can be true. And these are completely...
You can't use my... Hold on. Leave me. You can't use my stuff.
I can say Negro. I love saying it. Negro, you use my stuff all the time. If I had some shampoo, you'd be using that. You ain't got any damn hair.
Oh, hold on. So you say you did not want to get into the back and forth about which harm is greater.
It's not about which harm was greater. Harm received was the harm received. There's not degrees of, we're not going to heaven like, oh, well, what's your sin? The degrees of sin. The sin was the sin. The hurt was the hurt. And I can't tell you how you receive something. Whatever you tell me, that was the degree. I don't assign degrees. Whatever you felt, that's the degree. And so it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
I get what you're saying. The problem that I'm having with all this is with BAFTA. You're right. No one was talking about BAFTA.
And that's the problem. Like, why are we putting the responsibility where the responsibility lies? Man, I'm all hot again. Damn.
So hold on. So with them, the fact that they weren't going to apologize until individuals called them out for it, that's the part that bothers me.
There's just so many parts that bother me about this. Okay. And I can't speak to British laws in media, obviously, because I'm not British, nor did I look it up. But, in America, it would have been, I think, a different take, right? We had more... I don't know what happens in Britain, and I just don't. So
there's not a lot of black people there.
I don't care if there's a lot of black people there or not. There's not a lot of black people in America if you compare it to all of the people.
But it matters. Hear me out. It matters because it was the American black folk that decided, okay, no, oh, hell no. If you only got 5 people in London that are black and you got 25 that are in America that are black, 25 in America that are black are going to defend the 5 in London that are black, which is what happened here.
But here's the thing. You have 5 black people in London and you have a total of 100 white people. You have 105 humans. Everybody should have been offended.
But why would I, as a white person, get offended by language?
Because you disparaged someone else that is of the human race and made them feel uncomfortable and took away from their award. Everybody should have been offended. I don't give a shit about your skin color. You are a human.
But the brand comes first and BAFTA comes first, and they were all about protecting the brand. To hell with what it is that Lynn thought. And unless she was going to write that strongly worded letter, and that letter was going to then be plastered over the London Times or Skynet or whatever the hell it was going to be blasted on. Hey, they took the approach. I didn't hear it. I didn't see it. I'm sorry if you were offended. We apologize. What's for dinner?
But again, they saw it, they heard it, they made a calculated decision. And for us to say they didn't see it, they didn't hear it, we're again, as a people, making excuses for poor behavior for people that don't look like us. And I say, enough is enough.
When we think about this, and we think about speech, and we think about intent and impact, what do you think that teaches us about leadership in those 3 areas, whether it's culture, politics, or edutainment?
Help me to understand where you're going with that.
So you'd mentioned that real leaders versus a manager who does X, Y, and Z. So from a cultural standpoint, we know the impact of language, whether it's being black or whether it's being someone with a different need. What do you call it? A special, not disability, a different ability.
Oh God, different ability.
Different ability. From a politics standpoint, understanding that you do have free speech, you have protected speech, but there's some speech obviously that is regulated. And then from a edutainment standpoint, obviously, it's making certain that you are taking in consideration how it is that you are looking at authenticity, and it's clear that BAFTA didn't put in guardrails. They didn't care about the language that was used because it wasn't offensive to them. They did not care about the fact that Lynn may be offended because Lynn probably didn't watch BAFTA anyway, and so we're going to do what we need to do to protect the brand of the 100 people that did watch us. So from that standpoint, what are the lessons you believe that can be learned from this?
Okay, first off, I want to be really clear. They did care about certain language that was uttered during those awards. They did care because, again, someone had said something about free Palestine or whatever they said. They cut it. So they did care. It was when it was against a group that they didn't give a shit about, that they used, I didn't hear it, I didn't see it, oh, sorry, because it's always worked in the past, right? So I just want to be very clear on that they did care about some of the language, but when I do the risk assessment and I look at my strategy, I just rolled with it. What's for dinner? The lessons learned from that. Not that I'm trying to start the new Black Panthers, but I'd be so cute in some black pants and just adorable. Anyway, I digress. I'm saying that at some point we have to hold people accountable, even at work. When someone says that and then they use the excuse, well, I didn't mean any harm, or I just wanted to touch her. It was so cute. I just wanted to. No, we can say no. Was it Nancy Reagan? Just say no. We can go back to the 80s.
Wow. Okay.
With her big hair.
Here's what I would say. That from a leadership standpoint, if you're looking at it from the culture, politics, and entertainment realm, from a culture standpoint, knowing your audience, meaning knowing that you're going to have Black folk in attendance, knowing that you're going to have individuals with special needs in attendance, and understanding that the language that is used that may have been appropriate 5 years ago may not be appropriate today. From a political standpoint, I would say I agree with you with respect to understanding the risk that's involved and putting in those guardrails to be able to protect against that risk. And more importantly, making certain that you're legally protected if something should go sideways. The live thing, I think these shows with respect to entertainment, they make their bread and butter because it is live and because it's authentic. So I get it, I understand it, I appreciate it. But that does not absolve you from the stuff that happens when it's live. Meaning that if Lynn says something that's inappropriate, you're still responsible for it.
And so I was going to say that. So Lynn is still evolving. And you're right, the landscape and the language, it shifts every 5 seconds, it seems like. And so I think that we do have to give people grace and space to catch up. But if you consistently and constantly do, at some particular point after the second time, I don't give a shit about your sorries. You know what I think about sorries. You shouldn't have done it in the first place. But I say that we do give people grace and space and that we have an open mind, because I'm constantly saying, how would you like to be identified, whatever, because I care about you as a human. I do care about you. And I care about how you receive the things that I'm putting out in this world. Some people can say all of these pronouns and whatnot, so forth, and Bendigo. You know what? It's not about me. It's about the receiver. And if you want me to use a pronoun, I'm cool. It is literally no cost to me. None. And if that makes our relationship stronger and it makes you feel like a valued person in this world, I'm cool with that. But you're going to have to allow me a little bit of space and grace to catch up. I'm willing to do the work, but I don't know everything.
Good point. So if you're in leadership, this is what I would advise in terms of the playbook. When stuff like this happens, we have to acknowledge the impact. Okay? Let's acknowledge the impact. Then let's clarify the context in terms of what happened and why it happened. Let's try to avoid as much as we can being defensive about it. Like you said, if you don't know something, you don't know it. And then from there, announce what changes you're going to make and what that's going to look like. After that, show the change and create the follow-up. Because we understand that complexity doesn't excuse leadership, it demands it. Now, here's what I believe and what I know. This moment exposed that leadership gets tested more often than we believe and more often than we want to know. And Tourette's is real, historical trauma is real, public harm is real, racism is real. All those things are real. As I like to say, two things can be true, but none of those realities cancel each other out. And we live in a time where people are quick to jump and take sides. So you have individuals who want to be on the side of individuals with a different ability and individuals that want to be on the side.
And you can also say neurodivergent.
Individuals who want to be on the side.
It's helping you real time.
of individuals who said that racism exists. Okay? Both things can be true. Defend the person, defend the community, defend the institution, but mature leadership doesn't start with size, it starts with stewardship. If you run a platform, if you own an environment, if you're on a stage, take ownership of it, understand that things happen. And you have to be willing to take the ownership of the situation when it happens.
I agree. I think that was well said. And I think that again, separates the leaders from the managers. Leaders have people following them because they know that they care about them and they're intentional and they're strategic thinkers. Managers are just trying to ask for receipts from people that are just trying to get their damn cookie from the Costco. Wait, what?
You and your Costco.
Hold on now.
What do you have planned for this week? Other than clearly
I'm sorry?
Costco.
You know, I love Costco. I am going, you know what? I just got back from the New Edition concert in Charlotte, so that was fun. So anybody that has not voted for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we've got several people from the culture that are up for nominations. Please do that. I am headed to San Antonio later on today for a few days for a meeting, and then my son's home, so just gonna try and convince him to attend this HBCU here because I want to, selfishly, I just want a black daughter. Can you get me one? I just want you to marry a black woman. I just want one. I want it. What?
But he is black.
He is black, but I want him to marry a black woman. I want a black daughter.
But if he's married someone that's not black, the baby's still going to be black.
I don't want her. I want a black daughter. I want the black one from The Imitation of Life. I want the black one.
Okay. All right. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're not talking about a black kid.
No, I want a black daughter. I want him to marry a black woman. No offense, everybody else, but I want a black daughter.
Okay. All right. Well, good luck with that. All right, folks. Thank you again, as always, for...
What are you doing, John? You didn't tell us what you're doing.
What am I doing this week? You remember that project that I told you I was working on with respect to the kids that I was helping? I still need to pack up some clothing to send to them.
Player. What?
My men's group has been on me about the fact that I have not done my donation, and it's coming up springtime. We have wonderful 70-degree weather here in Atlanta today, so I want to take advantage of that, and I can do that by cleaning and getting some of that stuff over to these kiddos. That said, guys, thank you as always for taking the time to spend some time talking to us today. We have really enjoyed the feedback that has been given on the platform, and we appreciate all of you who listen. If you haven't subscribed yet, please be so kind as to subscribe. We can also now be found on Spotify. So what's the point of all this? The point is that moments like this expose the space where leadership actually lives, the space between intent and impact. Today we looked at the same moment through 3 different lenses. From a cultural lens, we saw why the reaction was immediate and emotional. So the N-word carries generations of history and trauma. That reality doesn't disappear because the moment was medically complicated. People react from lived experiences, not theory. And from a politics and institutional lens, the question shifts. See, when you run a stage, a company, a church, a school, or broadcast, you are responsible for the environment. Inclusion matters, accommodation matters, but preparation matters too. Mature institutions don't wait for complexity to arrive. They plan for it. And from the entertainment lens, we saw the tension the industry manages all the time. Live performances bring authenticity. They also bring unpredictability and sometimes risk. Platforms constantly balance talent freedom with audience trust. But when you step back, the lessons become clearer. See, leadership isn't about choosing which side of the moment you agree with. Leadership is about holding the tension responsible. You can acknowledge a neurological condition. You can acknowledge historical trauma. And you can still ask whether institutions are prepared to manage the moment. Because intent explains context, impacts define experience, and leadership lives in the space between the two. So if you're responsible for something, a team, a platform, a community, the real question isn't whether or not complicated moments will happen. They will. The question is whether you've built maturity to handle when they do. That's what mature leadership looks like. It acknowledges the harm, it understands context, and it strengthens the system so the next moment is handled better. That's the work, and that's the point. While you're out and about today, make the time to do something nice for yourself. And while you're at it, take the time to do something nice for someone else. Until next time, we'll talk to you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening and spending your time with us on I Take Your Point. For more unfiltered conversations like this, click the link in the description. Huge thank you to our production team. We couldn't do this without you. Quick disclaimer, the views shared are those of the host and guest and are for informational purposes only, not professional advice. Keep building your own table, take care, and be well.